Governorship Election Petition Tribunal in Abuja on Wednesday affirmed Monday Okpebholo of the All Progressives Congress as the valid winner of the September 21 governorship election. In a unanimous judgment, the three-member panel led by Justice Wilfred Pucci dismissed the petition filed by the PDP and its candidate, Aswe Godado. The tribunal ruled that the petitioners failed to prove their allegations of overvoting and upheld that Okpebholo secured the highest number of valid votes. The tribunal also criticized the manner in which the petitioners presented their evidence, stating that it did not sufficiently support their claims. However, the governorship candidate of the PDP in the 2024 Edo State governorship election, Aswe Godado, says is heading to the Court of Appeal to challenge the Edo State Tribunal verdict, which affirmed Monday Okpebholo as governor. Last night, we had a legal perspective to the decision of the tribunal. Tonight, I speak with another constitutional lawyer, Barrister Andre Mwante, but is also special advisor to Edo State Governor on legal matters. Barrister Mwante, thank you so much for joining us on Politics Tonight. It's good to see you again.
Good evening, Olajumoke. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
Good evening to you. I know the last 24 hours must have been quite fulfilling for you, the governor and the APC. Your party, the APC, have won round one in the series of petitions challenging their declaration as winner. You must have expected this, right?
Yeah, thank you, Olajumoke. You know, I'll say expectedly so. The petition itself was a wild goose chase, and from yesterday's judgment, it became clear that what they had filed looked more of a paper tiger than an actual petition on facts. Because just as the tribunal noted, they actually dumped documents. And as the tribunal noted too, documents don't speak for themselves. You know, they were challenging results across over 700 polling units. And unfortunately, the 5 polling unit agents they called could not give any credible evidence. They dumped BVAS machines, but what did they do? They got screenshots of those BVAS machines. And you have a long line of Supreme Court authorities that say you must call experts that will now establish, you know, like as they were trying to do in the second one of the grounds of their petition, to say that, oh, you had majority of unlawful votes and all of that. I mean, challenging the fact that the governor was not elected by majority of lawful votes. And of course, that was an allegation of overvoting. So what did they do? They dumped BVAS machine, relying on the provisions of Section 137 of the Electoral Act. They also dumped result sheets of polling units results, cutting across over 200 units that they said, you know, had cases of overvoting, you know, and even this issue of non-compliance with the Electoral Act, you know, they relied on, you know, Section 83, sub 2 of the Electoral Act that says you must enter the serial numbers and all of that. And unfortunately, the polling unit agents they called, 5 of them, none of them gave evidence, but rather they said there was evidence that those, you know, serial numbers were entered. So if you ask me, just as the tribunal noted, the petition was a pack of cards, and it fell. The grounds of that petition fell like a pack of cards. And we must thank the judiciary, because the judiciary remains the final hope or the last hope of the common man, and they have given hope to Edo people that the governor they elected on September 21st, 2024, was rightfully elected. And it's not victory for the governor alone, it's a victory for the rule of law, it's a victory for democracy and Edo people. It means that the governor has to focus more on the mandate given to him in dealing with the present existential threat of insecurity, particularly in Edo Central, because recent event shows that the governor needs not to be distracted, he needs to be focused, and he's doing just that.
So let's look at the technicality of the case as delivered by the three-man panel of the tribunal, because I mean this happened to the APC, to the PDP, the AAC today. It may happen to the APC tomorrow. In the first judgment of the tribunal, it was held that Adekule Rufai Umaje, who filed the joint petition, had no local standard to institute that case, as his petition was not based on election-related matters. And among other matters as well, the tribunal held that he did not participate in the governorship election and as such had no power to question the validity of the election. I'm asking you, you're a politician, you're a legal practitioner. Why do politicians and their lawyers, you know, continuously make this mistake?
Yes, they may have had 1 or 2 of those technical irregularities in the petition they filed, but under the new legal regime of election litigation, even when you have a preliminary objection saying that, oh, this person does not have local standard, the tribunal will still go and look at the merits. And I think I'll dwell more on the merits, because on the face of the petition, you discover they didn't even provide enough evidence. These are political parties that participate, just like the way people participate in the Olympics. Even if the court now decides to say, oh, Party A did not win, they don't even have sufficient votes. The spread is not there. They don't even meet the constitutional requirement to be so declared. So when the petition was now decided on the merits, it was without merits. And the court dismissed, the tribunal dismissed that petition. But I think the focus should be more on the PDP petition.
Absolutely.
Because you saw that Okpebholo was the main contender in that election.
Because that was your biggest political rival in that election. But does it also surprise you that the tribunal ruled that the PDP failed to call witnesses to prove the case of overvoting? Like I said yesterday, I'm surprised because, after the election, I had a conversation with Mr. Okpebholo, who convinced me effortlessly that he had enough proof, more than enough evidence to reclaim his mandate. What could have gone wrong?
Let me tell you one thing. When you are a petitioner, the burden of proof is not on the respondents. They were depending on INEC. But I think INEC did a fast one. And I think it's normal because that is what the law says. The burden of proof under Section 125 of the Evidence Act has never moved from the person who alleges. The law is settled that if you allege, you must prove. If you say there was a case of non-compliance, you were supposed to call credible evidence. And let me give you a very clear case of the mistake they made. They tendered polling unit booklets. That booklet is made up of 9 pages. They tendered only 7. So you had 2 copies that were missing. Even an appellate court cannot agree that those 2 copies that were missing is not fundamental to the effectual determination of that case, effective determination of that case. And even more than that, why will you dump beavers machines? The tribunal are not experts in that area. You were supposed to lead expert evidence. You were even supposed to lead even the people who operated those machines. But as I've noted, INEC did not call any witness because the burden was not on them, but was on the petitioners, which they failed to discharge. And even more than that, their facts were very inconsistent. The witnesses they called, those 5 polling unit agents, on the allegation of non-compliance, they said actually those serial numbers were entered. They gave evidence, against their own, party and in favor of INEC, that yes, INEC did the proper thing. And it was on the basis of that the tribunal gave its judgment. Just as I've noted earlier, the petitioner and his party, the PDP, they were on a white good chase. Because nothing could be further from the truth. So, if you are challenging polling unit results, Okpebholo is a lawyer, the Supreme Court have said you must call those agents, those party agents who participated, right, as polling unit agents who signed those result sheets. None of these persons were called. They called only 5.
So that's what makes it very interesting and confusing at the same time. And from the point of a legal practitioner, when you say credible evidence, what exactly do you mean? Because we all remember that the Supreme Court addressed the same issue, this same matter as regards to the 2023 presidential election. So from the point of a legal practitioner, when you say credible evidence, what exactly do you mean?
I will explain.
Right.
When you say credible evidence, you are talking of an eyewitness account. In a case of murder, for instance, you cannot call, you must call oral evidence. There must be an eyewitness to it, right? The same as a polling unit result. You cannot be talking of a polling unit result when you have the agent that would come and say, come, I collected 9 copies, not 7 copies. So there's already a doubt. So when you have such a doubt, it is only oral evidence, which is direct evidence, that can resolve that doubt. And again, you must know too that filing an election petition is not a tea party. There are some facts that Nigerians are not aware of. I'm aware that you had a team of lawyers who prepared the petition for the PDP. Another team of lawyers came to argue it. So for me, it is their case. They say they are appealing. We will meet them upstairs. But the good thing is that the tribunal has affirmed the victory of Model Okpebholo because the burden on the PDP to establish non-compliance and overvoting, they could not discharge that burden. And it is unfortunate because these are matters of evidence, which you cannot even resolve on appeal. You cannot resolve because it's a very clear case of it is what you present to the courts because every case is decided on its merits. no sufficient evidence was before the court, but rather they were relying on the novel provision of the Evidence Act, of the Electoral Act 2022, which of course says where you can produce a CTC of a document that clearly resolves the issue, you don't need to call oral evidence. But the documents they have tendered cannot resolve an issue. For instance, you submit a booklet that's supposed to be 9. Out of that 9 copies, you have only 7, right? On its face, you need oral evidence. So now explain what happened to those 2 copies. So that was the mistake they made. And of course, it's victory for PDP, it's victory for the APC, it's victory for Okpebholo, and it is a restoration of that mandate. It's an affirmation of that mandate that those people gave to Senator Okpebholo. So what they did was to take Nigerians on a white good chase. On the social media, they made it look so simple. They made it look so easy. They even said joy was coming. Unfortunately, that joy has come to the APC, has come to Senator Okpebholo. And I saw
and also, Barrister Mwanta.
It was a triumphal entry. And those people came out. The people who gave that mandate came out to welcome their governor. And I think that is one of the beauties of democracy.
And you know, one of the questions we've addressed on this program is why petitioners continue to waste the time of the courts with these kinds of cases. Again, do we continue to blame the legal practitioners, your colleagues, who take these cases before the court, or politicians who are highly optimistic that they may end up being pronounced the winner, even if they came, third during the elections?
It is just like a woman who has a problem with childbirth, and you are now faced with the issue of doing a CS. No doctor will say no, you allow the baby to die. So the lawyers that they have approached did their best, but when you don't have a good case, it is not the lawyers that make the case, it is the facts of your case. So they had a bad case, and I must commend their lawyers. They did their best. And that's why they feel they will try their luck on appeal. But from day one, we knew that that petition was a pack of cards, and it took no time for it to fall on the face of strong law and evidence. Because the evidence that we presented, that Senator Okpebholo presented, was that he won that election. But the petitioner failed to produce something to the contrary. But rather, they were dumping documents, they were dumping beavers machines. And how do you expect a beavers machine is the beavers machine a witness? For me, that was not smart. It was not, for me, elegant to just dump documents before the tribunal, relying on Section 137 of the Electoral Act. I mean, that was, if you ask me, it was a white goose chase.
But do you agree with your colleagues who have said, with the current constitutional arrangement, it is hard to prove election irregularities in 180 days. And for this reason, we may need a constitutional amendment to this effect?
I think, if you ask me, for such political cases, and I think that was what informed the amendments to the previous Electoral Act 2010, which of course now gave birth to this present one. Because I know in 2015 there was an amendment, then the latest is the amendment of 2022. So the time between when an election takes place and when, of course, the person is inaugurated, before now it was a very close period, but I think the initial plan was to create a 1-year gap, but unfortunately that 1-year gap has not been achieved. So I think there should be a 1-year gap, so that the 180 days, which is 6 months, you would have resolved all election cases before inauguration. So I think the National Assembly must go back to work and create enough time for this matter. And even if it's possible, you can even extend it beyond that 6-month period. But the argument is, when you keep this thing for longer times, it's difficult for INEC in terms of, because when the time between when primaries of political parties are conducted and when inauguration takes place, there's this tendency of, wasting time. In a place like, in a country like Ghana, the gap is not so much. It's just less than 2 weeks. You just go straight to the point. You go straight to the point. But again, because of the way our system is, you now have to establish polling unit by polling unit. Okay. And that is why it's always better to win your election by the ballots, not expecting miracles to happen in court. And I think we must deal with this issue of manual voting, if we can go the electronic way. Because if you have an electronic voting system, the time for you to deal with the hard copies of, volumes of documents, like imagine having over 4,000 polling units, you have a booklet of 9 pages, I mean, such volume of documents, bringing them in is difficult. But if you have an electronic voting system, it makes the whole process easy and even allows for transparency. So I would advocate that we have an electronic voting system so that the period within which we deal with election cases at the tribunal will not be so long a time.
Okay. And as expected also, the PDP says it's not pleased with the judgment. It has vowed to challenge the judgment at the Court of Appeal. The party is insisting that the election did not follow the rules set by the Electoral Act of 2022. The party still claims that the governor did not win the highest number of lawful votes. How worried are you, Barrister Wamta?
I can't be worried because yesterday's judgment has resolved their own initial challenge. They were the ones that challenged the results. The governor actually won that election across the TVC News districts, across the various local governments. He met the constitutional requirements. And it was for them to prove, which they failed to do. How will you call only 5 witnesses? It was carelessness on their part. They had enough time. But they failed. Did they not assemble over 70 witnesses? Why did they call their witnesses? What were they hiding? So for me, the burden is not on the respondent, but the burden is on the petitioner, which they failed to discharge. And why will you even dump documents? Why will you dump beavers machines on the tribunal? Beavers machines cannot speak, as the tribunal noted. So if they had a good case, they would have established it, but they didn't have a case. So would they not call witnesses at the Court of Appeal?
All right.
Would they not call less power witnesses that will now operate those beavers machines at the Court of Appeal? They had a bad case from day one. And as I've earlier noted, a particular set of lawyers prepared the petition, right? And the particular set went to argue. We don't have the British system in practice in Nigeria where you have a solicitor who listens to the client in chambers and the barrister goes to court to do the argument. We know what happened. From day one, we knew those who were initially preparing the petition and the others that came later. So it was not a well, put together petition, because if the petition was put together, they would have assembled witnesses that would take the stand and establish the allegations they made out, namely of non-compliance with the Electoral Act, Section 83 of the Electoral Act, and the issue of overvoting, which they failed to discharge. And of course, from the material facts before the tribunal, Senator Monday Okpebholo won that election, and he was rightly returned by the first respondent, INEC.
All right, Barrister Wamta, let's go on a break, and when we come back, we'll expand this conversation. Please stay with us, everyone. Back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you very much for staying with us on the program. Barrister Andre Mwanta, Special Advisor to Edo State Governor on Legal Matters, and also a constitutional lawyer, is my guest tonight as Tribunal upholds Governor Okpebholo, Monday Okpebholo's victory. Barrister Mwanta, thank you so much for staying with us on the program. Nigeria continues to reinvent, go through different reforms to achieving electoral integrity. But dragging the court into an electoral process looks like our forte. For you, can we ever see an end to this?
Yeah, thank you. We operate an adversarial system in Nigeria. And even if you look at even land issues, people will always go to court over land matters. Marital issues, we have loads of this. So I think it's almost becoming a cultural issue. No matter how beautiful our system is, people will go to court. But I think we must go the electoral way of electronic voting, because that tends to reduce the kind of tension that comes with these physical documents that we use, for our electoral processes. And I think we are ripe enough for it, but we will need more of internet penetration. I think that's when government should invest more, in ensuring that there's strong internet penetration, because for you to have an effective electoral voting system, you will need sufficient Wi-Fi, penetration. And I think that's where the National Assembly comes in. They have to legislate for that. And the moment we know that we are ripe for it, I think we'll now go the electronic voting way.
Mm. So would you say INEC's performance is justified with the verdict of the tribunal?
I think INEC did very well in the Edo election, and that is what the tribunal has established, that there was substantial compliance with the Electoral Act. That was the final analysis of that judgment, that there was substantial compliance, because the petitioners failed to prove non-compliance, because what they did was to bring 5 witnesses who were polling unit agents, across over 300 they challenged in some places, and in total over 700. I give you a simple analogy. Oh, you have this young boy that loves a Lamborghini. He has say, $1,000, and he feels that with $1,000 he can buy a Lamborghini. You need over $10,000, I mean, even if it's in second hand. So I think that's what they did. They went to the market with 1,000 naira to buy a Lamborghini, and of course the tribunal told them to come back. That it's not possible for you to achieve that, because you can't use 5 witnesses when you are challenging over 300. I mean, it does not even make sense. Their star witness he didn't even, from his own evidence, he didn't participate in that election. He didn't play any role. So I'm wondering what must have happened. And I've told you the snag. I have friends who were part of that legal team when they started. I didn't see them again. It is what happens when you use tailors to start fixing the vehicles and mechanics now complete the work. So that for me is what happened, because I'm still trying to understand the logic behind some of the issues they put up. And even some of the legs of their petition, they went south and all of that. So you would not blame that on the tribunal, neither will you blame that on the respondent. Because as I've earlier noted, Section 135 sub 2 of the Evidence Act is clear that the burden of proof is on the person who makes an allegation. You cannot make an allegation of non-compliance, and you cannot lead credible evidence. You cannot make an allegation of overvoting. What do? You dump Beavers machines on the tribunal. You dump documents without leading credible oral evidence. Even if you are saying you want to depend on documentary evidence, why will you, out of 9 copies of a booklet, you brought only 7? So those 2 missing documents, who will bring them? Were they expecting INEC to bring those documents when they were and they didn't even serve on INEC a notice to produce and all of that. So it was a very poorly prepared petition, and that is why, as the court noted, it must fall like a pack of cards.
So would you say politicians have
on appeal, because they are issues of facts? What the Court of Appeal looks at is the fact of law, not issues of facts. Issues of, if there's an error of law, yes, the Court of Appeal can resolve it, the Supreme Court can resolve it. And most of the decisions that the tribunal relied on are Supreme Court decisions. Wiki and Peticide, and of course the most recent one, between Atiku Abubakar and Tinubu. So for me, it's a well-delivered decision, which I know will stand every appeal, either at the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court, because most of the authorities the tribunal relied on are Supreme Court authorities, except they are not calling for electoral reforms or amendments of existing laws. But what the decision the tribunal gave yesterday was based on the law and existing authorities of the Supreme Court, of the Nigerian Supreme Court.
So would you say politicians have a lot to learn from this? Because like I said, this is stage 1, and expectedly other parties would want to explore all the constitutional alternatives left at their disposal. What lessons must politicians take away from this?
And I think there's a fact that Nigerians must know. There are 2 things that were involved in the outcome of the Edo governorship election. You had a how question and the why question. The how question is legal, which the tribunal has resolved. The why question is, Okpebholo went into that election with a divided house. Most leaders of the PDP were not happy with the way and manner he emerged. He went into the contest against 9 other persons. 9 of those aspirants were against him. Remember, they had a legion of pre-election cases. I even handled one of them concerning their primaries. And it's there. It's even it's a biblical injunction that the house divided against itself, right, cannot stand. The crisis in PDP remains. Have you not seen that they have 2 national secretaries? So you find that the PDP must put its own house in order. It's not different from what we saw in the Accord Party case or even in the AA case. So when a political party is not organized, that is what you get. It's not that APC did not have his own fair share. Remember that the present deputy governor of Edo State was an aspirant, but the APC went back to the drawing board. They resolved their internal crisis. All pre-election litigations were resolved before the election. The only pre-election case we had was a case they brought against the governor trying to disqualify him. I was the lawyer that handled that case. We defeated them. It was not even an internal issue of the APC. It was PDP that went to court. So I think it is a crisis in PDP that made Okpebholo to lose. The problem is not really the way and manner their petition was, because they didn't have a case. Their party members worked against them because their party members were not happy. And you see the droves of PDP members joining us. In the House of Assembly, they are joining us. 17 of their local government chairmen, who were, of course, elected under the platform of the PDP, joined us recently. So I think political parties must be more organized, because for you to win an election, you must be organized. If you don't do proper primaries, what do you expect? They say charity must begin at home. If, like I give you a clear case, the election that brought in Okpebholo was rigged. They played with delegates, they did all kinds of things.
And the
you do not have body of the PDP was complicit. I was a lawyer that handled some of those cases, and I speak from a
because you cannot prove that tonight. So because you cannot prove that tonight, we must move on from that conversation.
They had many of those cases in court.
I want to take you up on governance.
In the final analysis, is for political parties to organize themselves before they think of presenting themselves for election, their candidates for election.
All right, that's it. So before I take you up on governance in Edo State, I mean, it's been more than 100 days. Still talking about lessons, what lessons must the electoral umpire take away from this? Because I remember seeing the three parties engaged in war of words over who paid more money, who distributed more bags of rice in return for the vote of Edo people. Amidst other challenges, there were logistical challenges in that, during that election. The report after the election highlighted incidents of bribery, delays, and irregularities observed across various polling units. Logistics used to be a major challenge during conduct of election. What lessons must INEC, as an electoral umpire, take away ahead of the Anambra election?
I think ahead of the Anambra elections, there's need for INEC to engage stakeholders. And again, let me be honest with you. We operate a third world democracy. You know, the issue of money, you cannot take it away from election. And that is where the issue of reform comes in. And I will keep emphasizing the issue of reforms. It's something that is worth emphasizing. Because if you have an electronic voting system, the contacts you have with people will be minimal, right? You know, because at the end of the day, you can even have a situation like in the US where you have postal votes and what have you. So I think that electronic model will be the best mode of voting, I beg your pardon. So if we go that way in the future, it will help reduce this issue of vote buying and all of that. It will reduce it.
I mean, you're speaking into the future, but for now, what must we do towards achieving electoral integrity? And talking about delays, I remember we also witnessed delay in the collation of results. I know people had to wait till the next day for collation and announcement of election results. As a stakeholder, why did we still have to go through this challenge despite reforms in the use of technology for our elections?
I think you have those logistical issues. Maybe you find that, you know, from point A to point B, you know, this issue of not having good roads. I mean, you cannot take away the problem of logistics when we still do things, you know, the hard copy way. But under an electronic voting system, you don't need to move vehicles. You don't need to, everything is done electronically. I think that for me is a no-brainer. Until we do that, we'll keep having these problems. I remember this problem have been there since 1999. And gradually it is reducing with the introduction of the BVAS, you know, mode of voting. You know, and again, IREV, people tend to misinterpret IREV. IREV is just a result viewing portal. And I don't think IREV has achieved much. Because in the Edo election, it was hacked. We have strong evidence that the PDP was responsible for that hacking. Because the results they presented were all fake. And I'm happy that the Tribunal rightfully rejected those results.
All right, let's talk about governance in Edo State. It's been more than 100 days since Edo aligned with the federal government. Politically, what has changed?
A whole lot has changed. Before now, we used to have billboards. This is a federal road. Please bear with us. We don't have those billboards again. Rather, we have bulldozers. We have payloaders. The governor is now, you know, rolling his sleeves. The Benin-Sapele Road is receiving attention. Edo State government fund is there. The Benin-Asaba Road is receiving attention. Edo State government fund is there. The Benin-Aochi Road is receiving serious attention. The time between which you get to Okpebholo has reduced. Under Obaseki, it's a whole day's journey. So this is a governor that believes in practical governance. The governor is usually part of road construction. On a daily basis, he inspects every project across the tourist electoral district. Today is in Edo South. Tomorrow is in Edo Central. Next tomorrow is in Edo North. He does not pretend to be a technocrat. He says he's a practical governor. When he says something, he does it. And the problem of insecurity, he's giving it a good shot. And I tell Edo and Nigerians are in the days ahead, and I'm so happy that today the police, I think was it between yesterday and today, the Police Service Commission has given us a new commissioner, Mr. CP Agbonika. So I think the issue of security is top on the agenda of the governor and is giving it its best shot. Over 100 vehicles and logistical equipment were given to all the security agencies. We are trying to reorganize our vigilante structure. You saw what happened in Uromi. These were people we inherited from the past government, so they need a whole lot of profiling. Though the governor has sacked the head of the vigilante, but a whole lot of work will be done in the days ahead in ensuring that our state is safe, because Section 14 sub 2 says the security and welfare of the people is the primary purpose of government. And that is why, apart from road infrastructure that the government is fixing, health, school, and the rest, the government is giving so much attention to security.
Talking about school, I also see that the governor has declared a state of emergency on education in the state. What prompted this?
Because during the campaigns, when we went across the three senatorial districts, we discovered that we had a governor who said, oh, he had a do best, but these were schools without roof. Why would you be giving children, iPads to learn when they don't have roofs over their head, when they don't have doors? And we even had cases where these compounds were not fenced. So the government is trying to create a new model of ensuring that the learning environment of these children, first, is good, it's habitable, and the issue of welfare of the teachers. Because it is not enough to talk about learning method, you must deal with the human element. So the government wants to employ more teachers. Under Obaseki, we had in most schools 2.5 teachers, where the principal will teach about 4 or 3 hams. So we want a situation 3 levels. We even lost the arm system. When I went to primary school, we used to have primary 1 to E. We now have the situation we have only one single class for primary 1, and in public schools, one single class for primary 2. So this is the thing that this present governor will do differently. He wants to ensure that we have more teachers in our primary and secondary schools. We have more. Just recently, they employed over 100 technical school teachers, and I think more will come. Edo State University, before now, received a patronage sum of 41 million. 41 million from the Edo State government. But under this present administration, that subvention has been increased to 500 million. And even more than that, the government is trying to fix the infrastructure there. Though we get support from the federal government through TED funds, but the government has given education a human face. He has created a facelift across the entire senatorial district. Schools are being renovated, new ones are being built. So it is not just for you to call it Edo Best, but it is what you do. So it's an era of practical governance, of fixing all those roofs Obaseki refused to fix in secondary schools and securing the school premises for children to learn in an environment where they will be very free to move. Because I remember when I was commissioner under Obaseki, we had situations where children were shot when we had these court wars. And still talking about security, we now have a new anti-courtism law that has taken away all the courtists from Edo. Because we've noticed that there's a
that's taken or will take.
And that is why the government has introduced capital, the lawmakers have introduced capital punishment. A situation where if as a courtist you are found wanting, the person whose house you live in will be demolished. The same with kidnappers. So the government has done a whole lot across the various thematic pillars of its 5-point agenda and across the 3 senatorial districts.
But what kind of attention has
celebrating his 100 days, 1 year in office? A whole lot of achievements will be read out. Because
but talking about practicalities, kindly hold on, Barrister Mwanta. Kindly hold on. Talking about practicalities, what decisive steps has a governor taken when it comes to healthcare and also economic revitalization in the state?
I didn't get that. Please, can you say that again, please?
I want you to be specific about healthcare and economic revitalization. So what decisive steps has the governor taken in these regards?
Okay, in the area of healthcare, what the government wants to do is to ensure that across the 192 wards, because that was a promise Obaseki made of ensuring that we have primary healthcare centers, the idea is bringing healthcare closer to the people. And apart from that, Stella Obasanjo Hospital, which Obaseki started that he didn't complete. The governor has almost completed that hospital, and he intends to replicate it across the three senatorial districts. And in the area of economic revitalization, you cannot achieve that without good roads. As a city, Benin City does not even boast of a single flyover. And this governor has promised to put 3, right? And you can also imagine that if our city or our state is not safe, would investors come? So he's dealing with the problem of security. He's dealing with the problem of road infrastructure. He's dealing with even in the area of agriculture, because that has become one of the areas he will make the mainstay of Edo. In the good old days, we're known for oil palm cultivation. But under the previous administration, what did they do? They gave it to their friends. So the government wants to encourage small farm holders, and the only way you can achieve it is when you create access to their farms. And I was so shocked. There's a particular community called Temboga in Benin City. There were areas there I never saw before. But the government is fixing all the roads in these areas. And he's also giving incentives to Edo people who live in the diaspora. Before now, we never had a diaspora commission. Recently, the government appointed somebody as the managing director of that agency. So I think in the days ahead, a whole lot of this will pinpoint the need for, first, the issue of security, which the government is dealing with, infrastructure, which is dealing with. And the moment these things are there, investors will come, and the economy will be better for it.
But how do you describe the relationship between the governor and the people of Edo State?
I think there's a very good relationship, because this is one governor that has brought governance to the grassroots. In the course of doing road inspection, he normally interacts with the people. And I hear that in the days ahead, we'll be having town hall meetings across the 18 local government and across the 3 senatorial districts. But the good thing about it is that yesterday's tribunal decision has further strengthened the hands of the governor, because the distraction he got from the tribunal was that he needed to be sure. And now that he's sure, of course, I know people will get more, because this is one governor that wants to give governance a human face, cutting across the education sector, the security and other sectors of our state. And again, you must know one thing. When the people are with you, it's easy for you to govern. It is because Edo people are with the governor. That is why he's fixing roads, which hitherto were labeled federal roads. That's why he's fixing the education sector, he's fixing the health sector, and giving boosts to agriculture and food security. Those are the things the governor has promised he will achieve. Because when our farms have been taken over by herdsmen or kidnappers, you cannot talk about agriculture. So security, which forms top priority of this government, will be given the best shot under this present administration. And once our state is safe, investors will come in. Farmers will be able to, cultivate their lands without any fear of, being killed. Because the reason why we had that incident in Uromi was that they had cases where farmers were killed. And most of these people were labeled Fulani herdsmen. So seeing those people, and I, for one, I would not support any act of jungle justice, but that is why the governor has now decided to take this war against, these killer herdsmen and insecurity to the various farmlands. He has provided over 100 motorcycles for our security agencies. And that is why, for me, the new commissioner of police has a very serious task to deal with this problem of insecurity. And the governor is willing and ready to support him in achieving a peaceful Edo, a secure Edo. And for us, that remains the primary purpose of government, the security welfare of Edo people. And Senator Okpebholo has assured Edo people, because he made a speech today, that the mandate given to him, he will do everything in defending that mandate. And the only way you can defend that mandate is when you guarantee the security of our people and their welfare.
All right, we wish the governor of the very best. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. Barrister Andre Mwanza, constitutional lawyer, special advisor to the Edo State Governor on legal matters. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Olajumoke. It was a pleasure being here this evening.
Thank you. And thank you very much for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Good night.